Right, hello viewers, and welcome back to Wargame Red Dragon. I'm your host, PPCC, as always, and well, by request, we're doing the Pearl of the Orient campaign today. We've already finished the boots and pocket, and we've sort of left up the choice of either doing the Bear with the Dragon or the Pearl of the Orient to you guys, and from what it looks like you guys want to do Pearl of the Orient first, so I think we'll do this, and we will just sort of begin. Now, this campaign is going to be, it's quite long, and I've already checked it out a little bit, but I think I'll let the game just show you guys that in a second.
June 1982. The Falklands War, Margaret Thatcher's war, ends in a complete British victory. The Iron Lady is at the top of her popularity and influence. September 1982. While on an official visit to Beijing, the British Prime Minister expresses Britain's wish to see China extending the lease of Hong Kong. Deng Xiaoping counters this by putting forward China's will to recover all of its territories that are still under foreign administration. 1983. For a year, negotiations are pursued with no positive results. When they reach a deadlock, the Chinese premier bluntly states that he could walk in and take the whole lot this afternoon. Encouraged by her aura as a victorious war leader in the Falklands, the British Prime Minister takes up the gauntlet and orders the reinforcement of Hong Kong's garrison. In retaliation, China masses troops on Hong Kong's border, hoping to force her to reconsider Britain's position. 6 months later, the Iron Lady hasn't yielded an inch, and even convinces several Commonwealth states to stand alongside Britain. April 19, 1984. When it was unable to recover through diplomacy, China decides to recover by force. On April 19, 1984, at 1 minute past midnight, China recalls its ambassador to Great Britain after transmitting a last declaration of war.
Right, and the battle begins. So, yeah, this campaign is more so of another defensive campaign, this time dealing with the defense of Hong Kong, and it's sort of, in a sense, a bigger variant of the boots on pocket, so that's sort of neat. So anyhow, the Chinese are preparing an invasion. The British are sending in troops, but they'll take 10 days, or rather turns, to arrive. And with that said, we're going to have to mount a defense of Hong Kong for that time, for quite a little bit of time, till our reinforcements arrive. And the game really just sort of begins on that note and allows us to deploy. So let's begin. Now, there are quite a lot of troops inside this campaign, so it'll be really interesting to manage this thing. And with that said, we're going to have to take some time to just sort of look into the campaign map, as opposed to the boots on pocket, where, I mean, we only had like a handful of units for that campaign. So I think the best way to do is just to go from one side to other. So we'll start off on the right here, and we'll just work our way over there. So we have primarily, I mean, just like 4 units, big units. I mean, here we have the 3rd Commando Regiment. It is a whopping 127 units. It's primarily like Royal Marines, and they also have Marine tanks and just general naval stuff here. Namely, opposing them is a Chinese Marine unit of 179 units, and it's just a blob of troops, along with a small naval fleet as well, so that's rather interesting as well. In the center of our lines, I mean, we have a naval fleet, which I'm going to just send over here, and I just want them to shimmy over to the enemy's fleet for now. In the central zone, we have a whole bunch of just like anti-tank, anti-air coys, and the usual support groups, but the big units here is that we have we have some British heavy tanks over here, and a tank regiment covering this area, and they're mainly these chieftain tanks, or chieftain tanks. And inside the center of Hong Kong Island, we have some Gurkha infantrymen. These are the shock troopers for the British. These guys were pretty much the British troops taken from this area of the world, by or just you know, Southern Asia-ish area. And to be frank, I'm not particularly sure, but these guys are the elite bunch of guys that they brought in for World War II, and they had quite a fierce reputation. So yeah, that's another major unit. There's 48 of them, and they're elite units. They also come with a little bit of SAS, and coming from multiplayer, SAS are just absolutely wonderful. Moving here in Lantau Island, they also have a Royal Hong Kong Regiment, and these guys are actually just more or less infantrymen, militia infantrymen at that. So they're not that good, but they have an airport with 2 planes units stationed there. So that's sort of that. So, opposing this sector of the world, the enemy has just a mob of tanks, and they have like a whole swarming bunch of tank regiments. They have a few planes in the back, but it's mainly just they have like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 tank units here, and I think they bring in like 200 some tanks in total. In the back, they have a few airborne regiments, which is interesting, and they have some reserve infantry, but those are mainly just militiamen and cheapo tanks, but they also have a fair amount of planes. So anyhow, how I like to play the scenario is that so far I think the best plan is to just sort of pull back into Wan and hold the secondary objective to buy ourselves some time and to really just progress like that. So yeah, the enemy is going to send down a whole bunch of tank battalions, Canadian troops, and a British naval keg group comes in turn 2, so day 2, and a New Zealand force comes in on day 3, so those will be very, very instrumental in defending this area. And I believe the first 3 turns are scripted so that the AI automatically attacks Wan. So then we have a little bit of a better chance at winning this battle here. So yeah, really continuing over here, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to get a whole bunch of the supporting units, some air defense to move into Wan, an anti-tank company, light or some gunships as well, the Gurkhas I'm going to send in there as well, and so I'm also going to send in all the planes as well. And my reasoning for this is just due to the fact that they're bringing in so many tanks and so many troops at us right now that it's just immense. In the meantime, my Navy's going to move over here to Sector Lima. They're going to try to keep this area under control. And in the meantime, the game does open up and allows us to buy a few troops, namely the opening up of the Canadians. So far, I mean, on the seas, in theory, NATO's were Red-Blue Force pretty weak, at least inside the multiplayer. But the boats that we get here are actually pretty good compared to the boats that the Chinese get. So I'm pretty confident my one unit will be able to hold up here by itself. So I'm going to deploy Patricia's forces on this turn, and that's going to give us some more AT potential. So that's going to bring in some more troops like that. And they're going to attack on turn 3 here. The Aznak troops are going to come in, and we can, of course, deploy them in zones. And yeah, they're going to attack that sector. They're also going to move in some troops over here, but they're not actually going to start any offensives this turn. So it'll switch back to our perspective, and that'll allow us to deploy some of the Australia-New Zealand defense forces. They have some armor, they have some light horse battalions, and these guys they're actually flamethrower armed troops and napalm armed things in general, but they're honestly not that useful. But the main thing is that I'm going to call in the rest of the Canadian infantry inside Patricia's infantry regiment here, and I'm just going to send them inside Wan because that's going to be a meat grinder battle. I apologize, guys, if there's just, you know, a lot of strategical stuff here. It's mainly just due to the fact that this campaign really relies on us knowing about a whole bunch of the units here, and namely, I'll show you guys why in a second here. But before that, I'm just gonna put out a little, you know, shout out. If you guys enjoyed the series so far, or have enjoyed the Busan campaign, be sure to hit that subscribe button, subscribe to the channel, of course, as it does help me out quite a bit, and it's just below the video player. So the main thing is that starting from here, the Chinese is going to unleash this huge barrage attack of just 2 infantry regiments and 3 tank battalions. I mean, regiments are usually 3 battalions, so that's 9 battalions of tanks, and that's going to give them 192 tanks to throw at us right now. They have 16,000 points worth of troops throwing into this battle. So as you can tell, this is going to be one big grind battle for sure. They don't have any infantry. They have a very little AA. They have a few planes here and there, but for what it's worth, that is pretty much all they have, and we are just going to throw in everything we have. Hopefully, annihilate their troops just utterly, and that will allow us to continue on inside the game with the surprise attack blunted and the enemy down to barely anything. So we're going to throw in our big blob of units, and inside this battle you'll see just an absolute ton of troops. So anyhow, this map is just filled with little valleys and ridges, and it is just not tank combat terrain. And with that said, we are going to be fighting a massive grind, like meat grinder battle. So with that said, it will be very, very important to sort of fight a defensive battle, really try to take out all of their tanks as best as we can, and to just really force these guys on the defensive. So I'm going to try to cover Echo, Bravo, and just in general this line of hills. I think I'll let Gulf and area slip by, mainly because this area is not as important, and we'll really just try to fortify the towns, put infantry in the towns, tanks inside the valleys, and just make this place a living hell for them. And with that said, let's begin deploying. Now, for this battle, I'm going to rely on a ton of infantry. Namely, I'm going to call in some of these British Fusilier infantry, mainly because we have a lot of them, and inside this battle I expect to be taking very, very heavy casualties if my previous game is anything to go by, mainly due to the fact that, oh my god, the troops that they bring in here it's just, ooh, it's just too much. So we just pretty much want to like occupy every single house possible here, and we really just want to dwell this battle into a giant rocket launching fight. I want it so that the people attacking over here really just have to fight for every single living piece of terrain here on this map. And with that said, we're just going to put troops everywhere. So I think I'll get this cluster of houses for ATGM, and oops, and we want these guys to cover the main road here. It looks like the AI really likes to attack down this main road, so I'm going to try to cover this area with just a ton of infantry and a ton of stuff in general. In the meantime, I'm going to have some light forces securing the side ridges here and there. And again, I mean, the main thing is really just we want to turn this into a rights of meat grinder type of thing, where it's just blobs upon blobs smashing each other up until there's a winner pretty much. And this little valley area is good for our tanks, so I think I'll deploy some chieftain tanks. The British tanks are really, really heavily armored, but they're not particularly good at shooting on the move. They have a good cannon and a decent range, but again, they're slow tanks, and they're just, in general, I mean, they're good for the cannon on the tank, but that's pretty much it. So I think we'll have a deployment over there like that, and I'll have a few more tanks over here. Buy them a single-tracked rapier to deal with air. Likewise over here, a single-tracked rapier to deal with air. And over here inside this area, I think I'll actually deploy a Canadian ADAT system. And this is a dual anti-ground, anti-air system, so that'll cover that area quite nicely. And that'll be pretty much the point count for this match, so I think we'll begin. And I'll get my infantry to just deploy here. And of course I'll get the vehicles to pull back. And the battle begins. Well, it looks like we've already spotted some of their AA units, so that's good. We'll take those out. And the main thing is that because we're getting 8 points per every 5 or so seconds, it's just a ton of points for us. So we should be able to buy our infantry or our air units in a second here really, really easily. Oh, they actually have some artillery. Ooh! Damn it. My chieftains really need to get... Oh my god, I hate artillery, it's just the worst. They're gonna shimmy away over there. That's fine. Yeah, and on this battle, they have a lot of helicopters as well in the start. So I'm gonna deploy Phantoms, and these Phantoms are gonna get rid of... these Phantoms are AA planes. I wanna get my tanks safed up here. As soon as they retreat into the forest, I think they'll be alright. But the Phantoms are armed with 2 infrared armed missiles, so they should be able to chew up these helicopters pretty easily. And they're going to get attacked by those J-87s, but we're going to pull back right away, get those planes out. And as you can see, I mean, we're building up a massive stockpile of points, so I can just buy a whole bunch of planes. One of the interesting troops that they get are these Harriers, and they fire a missile barrage, kind of like a giant shotgun. And these Harriers, they carry a decent amount of payload, 36 missiles, so I mean, they're not bad by any chance, but they're not particularly great. But the main thing is that they reload really fast. And they can just sort of stun a whole bunch of troops at once, which is the main thing. And they also reload pretty fast. So that's one reason I keep them around. And on these cheapo tanks, they actually do a fair amount of damage per hit. So, our guys are just going to barrage the living crap out of them. And for this battle, the overall theme is that we're going to use Harriers to just absolutely stall the hell out of their tanks, while our infantry just sort of pick them off. And as that occurs, we might have to buy some of these tornado bombers. They're armed with cluster bombs, which are in theory really good against tanks. But the problem with them is that they're only good if you can hit the target dead on, whereas these Harriers can panic troops really, really easily, and you more or less just sort of have to spray down a general vicinity with them. And yeah, these Milan troops are just taking out a ton of their vehicles. They're going to need a lot of supply though, so I'm going to bring them that immediately. And on our flank here, I think I'm actually going to call in a set of chieftain tanks just to cover this area. I didn't do that earlier, mainly because we had some problems earlier with the need to buy infantry and stuff and such. This Harrier should really just be pulling away. Why are they still there? Yeah, our Harriers are going to duel it out here. And I'm going to get my tanks here to do an attack move order. Hopefully they can take out some of those ZTZs and things and such like that. I'm going to launch their ATGM helicopters against me. That's not good. I think I'll pull back my tanks here for now. And yeah, they're going to send in just pretty much blobs upon blobs of tanks. So we are really going to have to just try to counter these guys well. And do as much damage as possible to these guys, really, because if their tanks get line of sight on our troops, they can pretty much just mass blob them down, which is a big problem. Canadian rifles here they're still alive, but they're out of ammunition, which is a really, really big problem. You know what, here, I think I'll get all of the Harriers. Those riflemen are dead by just for sure, so I don't think I'll worry about them that much anymore. But yeah, for this battle, we are just going to have to grind through a ton of their infantrymen and a ton of their stuff in general. I have some of these Challenger ones, and these are specialty tanks. They're worth more so than like 100 points each, and they're really, really deadly, so I think I'll bring some more of those guys up. And in this battle, we are just going to be throwing units left and right, trying to stall up the enemy here. Yeah, this battle is just really, really intensive. Oh, and their tanks are going to engage our tanks inside the forest here. I'm gonna give my tanks a move order. Yeah, when our tanks are stationary, they'll win these fights, especially against panicked enemy tanks, but they have a really low, really high reload time, and they, yeah, sort of just like that. I'm gonna move some more tanks in here. Get the plane blob, send them over. Oh, that is gonna need our blowpipe would. Well, I hope that our blowpipe troops will take out those planes. I think I'll send in my big old blob of troops to help them out here. And yeah, as soon as they come close to the town, the Fusiliers are gonna open up on them, and they're gonna put in a few shots. Try to shift the Fusiliers so I have the second blob of them occupy this building sector. Harriers can also provide some support for those for anti-helicopter rolls, which is really nice. Come on, I just want to get my Fusiliers firing, and they're gonna decimate those enemy tanks. Ooh, picked off my ADAT system, that sucks. And great, they're firing smoke. The problem with the Harriers is that they need a direct line of sight to fire, and at times when they don't have that, they'll just keep on circling about the enemy's zone, which kind of sucks. because then they just have a tendency to die because they're not really expensive planes, meaning that they don't have really good AT systems or ECM systems.